Well, this is a new initiative for Ella. Most of our, as you know, if you've been involved with Ella, most of our workshops have been primarily, in person, face-to-face. That was kind of the hallmark of the program. But given the current circumstances, we're going to try to adapt and try this virtual training. So this is going to be, it's a new step for us. We're going to see how it works. I'm sure we're going to have some hiccups today, but hopefully we'll get through it with as little pain as possible. But I should start off by saying I hope everyone and their families are doing well and managing okay during these extraordinarily difficult times. It's just, it's been a very challenging spring and summer. Okay, so running Tree ID virtually. This could be interesting. It might work. I'm hoping it'll work. We'll see how it goes. So once again, I'm hoping you guys can see everything okay. I did a little run through and I think you can see some of the details for some of the trees that we're going to be trying to identify today. I ask for your patience. If you have questions, just raise your hand and hopefully we'll be able to get to them and hopefully this will work out all right. So I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay. Nadia, can you hear me? Oh, someone raised their hand. Hey, Nadia, can you hear me? No?
I can hear you. You're all set and you're showing up.
Okay, someone was raising their hand and I don't know how to, do I answer that or can you answer those?
I should be able to answer that if I can, hold on. Because you've shared your screen, it's made it large, but let me see if I can get, okay, here we go. We have Ralph who just raised his hand. I'm gonna ask him to unmute himself.
Ralph, do you have a question?
Could you give us permission to record?
Absolutely. And also we are recording this and it will be up on the Ella website after, but you're more than welcome to record yourself.
Well, we have to request that for you to record. Let us record.
Oh, okay. I will allow you to record right now. Did you get that?
Thank you.
All right. We have one more question coming through from Glenn. You can ask him to unmute himself.
Hi, I ordered the tree finder, but it hasn't arrived yet. Will I be wasting my time without it in hand?
It will be, Glenn, it will be kind of challenging to do much without the tree finder, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you. I'll stay until I'm lost.
Yeah, okay. And as Nadia said, we're going to record this. We'll put it up on the website. She can email everybody to let them know when it's up. And that way, if you wanted to go back to it, I'm sure you can.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Glenn.
All right. Any other questions before we get started?
I think we're all good. It's all you.
Great. All right. So this workshop is primarily going to serve as an introduction to the process of tree identification. This is really for novices, for beginners. It's by the end of the workshop, you're not going to be experts, but hopefully you're going to have some familiarity with the process. And once again, all of this identification, it's practice. So just keep that in mind as we go through this. So Glenn had mentioned this. So I just wanted to remind everyone, hopefully they have their tree finder, because this is the process that we're going to use in the workshop today. So hopefully you have that ready, because we're going to be going through it. I'm going to be walking you through some examples today. And if you don't, like I said, we are doing this and it will go up on the website so you can go back and try this out. Before we get started, I'd be remiss if I didn't make a little plug for a program that we offer at PACE called the Environmental Conservation Certificate. It's currently offered to undergraduate students at PACE, but it's also offered as a continuing ed program. So anyone could take it, you just wouldn't receive credit. It's a series of 5 courses. There is a plant and animal identification course. That's why it's relevant to what we're talking about today. There's a habitat identification and assessment course. There's a course in environmental education and interpretation. There's an internship, and there's a GIS course. So all 5 of those are required to get the certificate, but you don't have to take all 5. If you're just interested in the identification course, you could take that on your own, and that would be through our Office of Continuing Ed. So if anyone's interested, my email is down below. I'm going to put this PowerPoint on the Ella website as well. You feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Okay. So when we get into tree identification, we generally look at a variety of characters or traits of the trees, you know, leaves, bark, flowers, fruit, the shape, the habitat. We use all of these different factors to come up with an identification. Today, what we're going to be using mainly are leaves, because that's how the Fern Finder is structured. But I want you to keep in mind that you really need to look at a variety of factors to come up with a identification for a majority of trees. Like I said, this is for novices. So we have 2 major types of trees in this area. We have coniferous trees. So you can think of the like evergreen trees, which are on our left here, pine trees, hemlocks, things like that, and deciduous trees. So those are our 2 major groups in this area. Focusing on the coniferous trees, really, you know, their leaves are a little different. They're needles. So the needles can take a couple of different forms. So on our left, these are, you know, the more traditional kind of needle that you're used to. This is a very long needle on this tree. And on the right-hand side, these are more scale-like needles that are really, they overlap one another. On the right, this is an eastern red cedar. When we're also looking at the needles to identify conifers, we look at at how they are arranged on the tree. So if you look on the left here, sometimes they're arranged in these clusters or bundles. So you can see this bundle right here contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 needles in it. Whereas this on the right, these needles are just arranged singly on the branch. So these are some things that we're going to be looking at today. I'm just giving you some context for when we go through the key and some of the questions are brought up. For deciduous trees, obviously you guys all know this. They drop their leaves every year. It's one of the most common types of trees in this area. We don't have a lot of coniferous trees. I mean, we do have white pine, we have eastern hemlock, some other trees like Norway spruce, which have been introduced, but mainly deciduous trees in our area. And when we're identifying deciduous trees, we look at a variety of factors. So we look at the leaf arrangement, the type of leaf, the margin, which is the edge of the leaf, whether it's toothed or smooth, the texture of the leaf, and the shape. And I'm going to go through each one of these. So these are things that the key is going to be talking about today. So that's, once again, I want to give you some kind of introduction to the terminology. In terms of the leaf itself, leaves are made up of primarily, there's the blade, which is the primary photosynthetic structure. And then the petiole is the structure where the leaf attaches to the branch. Okay, and as you know, when the leaves fall off the tree, they break off where the petiole meets the branch. There is a central midrib, which runs down the center of the leaf. And then off of that are veins. And sometimes the vein pattern is used to help identify the tree. So once again, you know, you're going to have to go back to this. If you're not familiar with the terminology, if this is the first time you're hearing this, you might have to go back to when you're working through the key. Okay. Probably one of the most important factors is the branching pattern. So this is really essential to get down. And there's really two main branching patterns in our area for trees. The first is what's called alternate. So if you can see on this branch right here, this first leaf is coming off to the right-hand side. The next one is coming off the opposite side of the branch. So they're just alternating, okay? So alternate is one main branching pattern. The next is what's called opposite. So the leaves are coming off opposite from one another. Pretty straightforward. Whorled is when the leaves radiate symmetrically from the stem. That's common more in herbaceous plants. There are some trees, but not a lot in this area that have a whorled branching pattern. So alternate and opposite, and we'll walk through this as we go through the key. A little trick, this is not so important for today, but I thought it'd be nice for you guys to know, to think about, is a little device. It's called Paul's Madcapped Winged Horse. And this is for trees or shrubs that have opposite leaves only. So only for opposite leaves or opposite branching patterns. Paul's stands for Paulwinia, which is the princess tree, which is an introduced tree. So that's going to have an opposite branching pattern. MAD is maple, ash, dogwood. So maples are trees, ash are trees, dogwoods are primarily shrubs, but there is the flowering dogwood, which is a tree. Once again, all opposite. And then CAP is Caprifoliaceae family, which includes things like elderberry, viburnums, and honeysuckle. So these are primarily shrubs. Winged is Winged euonymus. It's an invasive shrub. And horse is horse chestnut, which is a tree. It's not that common in this area. But if you see something that has an opposite branching pattern, if you remember this, Paul's madcap winged horse, it'll actually kind of narrow down what it could be right off the bat. That's just something to, I wanted to introduce you guys to so you're kind of at least aware of it. And here's just the example for the MAD. Here's a maple. You can see the leaves are coming off opposite from one another off the branch right here. Same with this dogwood and same with this ash, right? The leaves are directly across from one another. Okay. The next thing we want to think about is whether the leaf is simple or compound. And some people struggle with this a little bit. For a simple leaf, you only have one leaf blade. So right here, it's our standard leaf. If you think about something like a maple leaf or an oak leaf, those are simple leaves. You have the leaf blade, and then here's the petiole, and that's basically it. Whereas a compound leaf, the leaf blade is divided up into what are called leaflets. So these are all leaflets here. This whole structure is the petiole. So this is not woody. And they come off, the leaflets come off of the petiole. And common examples in this area are things like ash trees, hickory trees. So some people struggle with that a little bit, and we're going to go through some examples today. In terms of the margin of leaves, some terminology. So entire just means it's fairly smooth. The edge of the leaf, there's no teeth. Lobed, you have these kind of rounded indentations along the edge of the leaf. And a tooth-leaved, obviously, it has teeth, it has serrations along the edge of the leaf. So these are also identifying characteristics. Sometimes we'll also look at the texture of the leaf. So you can see this leaf is actually hairy on the bottom. Sometimes they're rough, sometimes they're smooth. These are all things we look at as well. The key will ask that for certain species. Sometimes this leaf here on the right, this is, they have a leathery type, very thick leathery texture. Things like mountain laurel are like that in this area. So we think about texture as well. And obviously habitat. Habitat's an important factor as well. If you're trying to identify a tree and you're in a swamp and the field guy says it grows in dry uplands, then you're probably not identifying correctly. So we also have to weigh habitat into consideration as well. All right, so that was kind of a quick little gist of the factors that we're looking at. I don't expect you to remember everything, but at least it's just in your head and you've seen some examples. And as I said, the first few examples we're going to walk through together. Okay, so now we're going to transition into using a key to actually identify the trees. There's lots of keys out there. The tree finder I like because I think it's a fairly simple key. It's a dichotomous key, which means you have what are called couplets. You have two choices. It asks you a question. There's two choices. You pick one of those choices based on whether or not it matches the leaf that you have, and then it moves you to the next question. In each question, there's two choices, and it kind of narrows it down until you eventually identify that tree. As I said before, the tree finder uses primarily leaves for identification, but it will refer to other features of the trees. Sometimes it'll talk about the branches or the bark or fruits or things like that. So it's useful now. It's not so useful in the winter, but they do have a winter tree finder as well. I like it, as I said before, because I think it's fairly easy. It's a good introduction into the process of identifying really anything or using a dichotomous key. I get the question, why not just use apps a lot? I'm a little old school. I like keys. There's apps like iNaturalist, GoBotany, LeafSpot, where you can take a picture of a leaf and it'll tell you what it is. For me as an educator, that's not the best way to learn. At least I don't feel that's the best way to learn. And I think walking through the keys, you're actually looking at things a little more closely instead of someone just feeding you an answer. So that's why the apps do have a use. I'm not saying they're not useful, but I think for learning how to identify things, I think is a good place to start with these types of keys. All right, so this is just an example. Hopefully you've at least kind of looked through your tree finder a little bit. Here's an example of a couplet. There's two choices here, this top choice, the bottom choice. So let's just say that our leaf matches the top choice. Well, it tells us to go on to page 21 to this symbol. This is important. The symbols are important to remember. So we're on page 18 now. We have to go to page 21 and find this symbol. And here we are on page 21. Here is our symbol, and there's our next couplet. And it gives us two choices, and this happens to be the last choice. So it's one of these two species. Sometimes where I see people get tripped up a bit is they kind of rush a little bit, and they forget what their symbol was, and they might just pick the wrong symbol. I know it sounds crazy, but people do that all the time. Okay, some other factors with the tree finder to think about. You know, the geographic range covered by this book really extends from the Rockies east. So it's covering a pretty wide geographic area. So when you're looking at your tree, when you think you have it identified, it's going to show you, I'm going to go back. It's going to show you, like for these two trees, it shows you the geographic range of that tree. So if we're in New York and we think we've identified a bald cypress, look at the range. It doesn't occur in New York. So keep that in mind when you're identifying, identifying trees. Make sure you're finding the right, something that occurs where you are. Habitat as well. So the book also talks about the habitat of different trees. It's on page 2. You can see up here. I apologize, it's a little blurry. It has a key. You know, if you're in the middle of a swamp and you identify a tree and it says it's found in a swamp, but you're actually in the Eastern Mountains, well, then you know you've probably done something wrong. So once again, make sure the range matches up, the habitat matches up. There's also this section called place, where you can look at this as well. There's these different kind of cartoons that represent different scenarios where that tree is found. For non-native species, it has this little ship showing it was brought in from a different area. So keep these all in mind and refer to them as well, because they help you with your identification. Okay, so before we jump into this, we're almost at 12:25, we're doing okay for time. Some general tips, just from my experience, I use this a lot with students. Just take your time. They tend to rush a little bit. Take your time, work through it. Pay attention to the symbols and the page numbers. Sometimes people get tripped up there. When you're identifying a tree, like when you're using this guide on your own, look at a number of leaves before making a determination. Sometimes leaves will look a little funky. You might get one leaf for whatever reason, maybe it was chewed on by an insect, that looks like it has a toothed edge, but the rest of the tree, they're smooth. So kind of look at, you know, a variety of leaves before making your determination. And obviously don't use damaged leaves. And the biggest recommendation I can make is just patience. I'm going to be honest with you and tell you right now, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes today, probably. You're going to need to restart. You're going to get to a tree and think, oh, this isn't what I have. You're going to have to start from the beginning. It's going to happen. But it does get easier with practice. And like, as I said, using these keys, it's a good starting point for identification. You know, you'll get to the point, if you get into this and you learn more and more, you're going to get to the point where you're no longer even using the tree finder. You just know trees by sight. And there are lots of other ways to identify trees. Like I said, you can use the bark, you can use other features. This is just a simple starting point. Okay. Before we get into that key, I just wanted to bring up a couple other keys that I really like that I use with my classes. If you're interested in this, in botany or plant identification, the folks that make the tree finder also make the fern finder, which I like this as well. And if you're not familiar with Newcomb's Wildflower Guide, it's a great key for flowering plants, shrubs, and vines. Okay. So at that point, we're going to move into some of our identification, but I wanted to see if anyone had questions before we start. I don't see any hands raised. Good. Okay. So get your tree finders out. Get ready. We're going to do our first tree. All right, Dan. So we're always going to start on page number 5. Why can't I see myself? All right. Now, do you know why I can't see myself? I can only see you.
I can see you. I'm not sure why, but I think everyone else can see you.
Yeah. Okay. I think I just had, because I need to see, show thumbnail video, show grid. Because when I go to speaker view, it's just the grid. And when I go to speaker view, it's just you, actually. Okay.
That might be because of the co-hosting.
All right,
Sorry
I fixed it. All right, so we are all on page 5, hopefully, right here. All right, so this is our first tree. So I'm gonna walk you through this one. All right, so our first couplet at the very top is the first choice is if the tree has needles, go to this symbol. If it has leaves, go to the other symbol. So hopefully everyone realizes that this tree has needles, right? All right. So that's going to send us down to that next symbol. The next couplet is if the needles are long, 1/2 inch to 18 inches, or if the needles are short, scale-like or overlapping. So I'll try to give you a close-up. Here's one needle. I would say that that's a fairly long needle, correct? Okay, so that's going to send us to that coupling that looks like there's a person's hand holding the needles. And the choices for the next coupling are, the first one is if the needles are in bundles or tufts, or if the needles are borne singly. Is everybody kind of with us so far? I hope. Okay, I'm going to give you a close-up. Do you think that's the needle? So do you think that's in a bundle or tuft or single? Hopefully everyone sees how it's in a bundle or tuft. Okay. So if it's in a bundle or tuft, it says go below to the next couplet. And our choices are if the needles are in bundles of 2 to 5, or if the needles are deciduous. So I don't know if you guys can count how many needles are there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You guys all see that? That's us to the next page, page 6. They're not deciduous, then they're bundles of 2 to 5. So go to page 6, and the symbol is for pines. And the couplet is if there are 5 needles in the bundle, or if there are 2 or 3. So we already said there were 5. Hopefully everyone can see. These two are kind of sticking together. Hopefully everyone can see that it's 5. And it is a white pine. So this is an eastern white pine. That was an easy one. We all think we got that? Any questions before I move on to the next one? All right, I'm getting some thumbs up, thank you. So fairly straightforward. I tried to pick easier examples today because I know through the video it's hard to see some of the finer features. But I think some of these, it's gonna get a little tougher than that one. All right, so that was our eastern white pine. We're gonna move on to our next candidate. All right, so let's start back on page 5. And does this tree have needles or leaves? Obviously it has leaves. So now we're gonna go, tells us to go to the symbol on page 14. I'm gonna hold it up, so if you guys wanna try to go ahead, you can, but I'm just gonna walk through it a little slowly for other folks. All right, so this is our next question. Oh, I'm gonna move back a little bit. Do we have an opposite or alternate branching pattern? Hopefully you guys can kind of see what's going on here. So this one's a little confusing because if you look at these two down, whoop, these two here, that's opposite. But if you look up here, there's nothing across this other side, right? So that might make you think maybe it's alternate. This is an example that where I talked about where you're going to look at a variety of features on a tree because the other branch here was just broken off. Okay. And so when I looked at the entire tree, the majority of the branches were opposite. All right, so we're on opposite. So it tells us if the leaves or buds grow opposite, go down to the next symbol for opposite. And so our next question is asking, are the leaves compound or simple? So I'm going to show you the leaf. Here's the leaf and the petiole. You all see that? You guys think it's, no, it's hard to, I can't really ask questions. It's hard to be interactive with 55 people. This is a simple leaf. We have the blade up here and then the petiole going downwards joining the stem, right? So it's just one leaf blade. This is a simple leaf. All right. So it says in that couplet, if the leaves are simple, go to page 18 and there's a symbol there. All right. All right, so now our choices are if the leaf has a single main vein with smaller side veins and is without teeth or lobes, or if the leaf has 3 to 7 main veins radiating from one point and is lobed. You guys can't, you're not gonna be able to see the veins on this, but is it toothed, oops, is it toothed or lobed? Right? It fits that description. So it says the answer to that is go below to maples. All right. So our choices, I'm going to pop a leaf off now because we have to really focus on the leaves. So now we're at the maple couplet, and the choices are if the notches between the lobes are V-shaped, go to one section, or if they're U-shaped, go to the other section. Whoops. So it's really looking at this little notch right here. And hopefully you guys can see it's more of a V shape than a U shape. All right, so if it's V-shaped, you go below. And our next couplet says, it's asking, are the leaves distinctly 5-lobed or are they 3-lobed with maybe 2 smaller lobes? So you can see there's 3 distinct lobes here. 1, 2, 3, and there are these other smaller ones. So these, I would not say, these little small ones, I would not say these are distinct. So the 3, it's primarily 3-lobed. That might be a little hard for some folks. They get kind of hung up on that, but these are really smaller. Okay, so we're saying it's 3-lobed, so we're going to go to page 19 to that symbol. And the next couplet reads, if the leaf surface is rough, it talks about the veins, which we can't see. The teeth are small, or teeth are somewhat of the same size, and the tree is small and shrubby. It gives you an option. And it says if the leaf surface is smooth and the teeth are of regular sizes and it is not, and the teeth are of irregular sizes and it is not a shrub. So I don't know if you guys can see, but the teeth are kind of, some are fairly large and some are pretty small. And this is one of those examples where it would be helpful if you actually saw it. The tree is quite large. So this is a red maple. Were you guys able to follow along with that, or does anyone have any questions? Did you get confused or stuck? Good? Good, this is great. Moving along. All right, we're gonna go through another example, see if you guys can follow along again. So we're gonna go back to page 5. And so here's our tree. It has leaves. So that means we automatically go to 14. Most of the time we're going to be going to 14. All the deciduous trees start on page 14. Okay, I'm going to try to hold this so you can see the branching pattern. Okay, this is hard. I need like a video person to help. All right. Do you guys, so the next question is it alternate or opposite? So here's one leaf coming off here, There's nothing on the other side. We go up to the next, it's on the opposite side of the stem. Okay. So this is, hopefully you can see, 1, 2, alternate branching. So that's going to send us down to that, where is that going to send us? To page 21. And we're at the alternate symbol on page 21. It's in the middle of the page, it's the middle couplet. Now it's asking, are the leaves compound or are they simple? So here's where the leaf comes off of the stem. I'm gonna break it off. So what do you guys think? This is the leaf. This is the whole blade. This is the petiole. These are the leaflets. So this is a compound leaf. This is not a woody structure. So compound leaf. All right, let me find where I was at. So if the leaves are compound, you go below to that next symbol. And now it's asking, are the margins smooth in the first couplet or are they toothed? And let's see, I know, hopefully you guys can see that what, can you see the teeth? Whoop, it's hard for me to hold it in point. You can see the teeth along the edge. All right, so they have toothed margins. So we're gonna go on page 24. So it's asking, now it's asking that first couplet on the top of page 24 says if there's one tooth, occasionally two, at each side of the base of the leaflet. Well, here's the base. I don't see 1 or 2 teeth down at the base of the leaflet, right? So what's the next choice? If there are teeth continuously along the margins of the leaflet. So if you look along, whoop, if you look along the margin, I can kind of see teeth the whole way, right? So it's going to be that second choice. So we're just going down, we're staying on the same page on 24 to the next couplet. The first thing is it says if it has milky juice, and the base of the tree is enlarged to a cone that encircles next year's bud, and the leaf, stem, and twig are hairy. Well, I don't know if you can see the leaf. If you can see the leaf stem, this is not hairy. And it says, and the tree is crooked and shrubby. I can tell you this is a real tree. It's not shrubby. So the next choice is if there's no milky juice and the tree is tree-shaped, go on to next page for the tree symbol. And the couplets, I'm kind of just going to distill it down. They're asking if the leaflets are small or large. And hopefully you guys can gather that these are quite large. So it's that second choice in that couplet, on first couplet on page 25. So it says, go on to next page, and there's a little symbol for nut trees. Okay. And so our first choice is asking if the crushed leaf is aromatic. And it looks at the pith, which is inside of the stem. And it asks if the leaves narrow gradually to elongated, straight-sided V base. On the first couplet, the second couplet is if the end leaflet narrows gradually to a long, straight-sided V shape, and the end 3 leaflets are usually distinctly larger than the other leaflets. So I know it's starting to wilt. So one of the easiest things to look at is you can hopefully see that these 3 leaflets are much larger than these 2, right? And it is not aromatic if you crush it, so it's the second choice. So we're going to go on to the next page under hickories. So we're now on page 27 on the first couplet, and it asks if the leaflets at the tip of the leaf are much larger than the others, and if the leaf has only 5 to 7 leaflets, go below. And the second choice is if the 3 tip leaflets are not much larger. Well, we already said the 3 are larger. So we're going to go below to that first symbol. So now we're at the last couplet on page 27. And it asks if the leaf is 6 to 12 inches long, or if the leaf is 12 to 20 inches long. So that's that whole leaf, including the petiole. So hopefully you can see it is definitely of the larger variety. So this is a shagbark hickory. Did we get that? Did anyone have any troubles with that? Getting some thumbs up. This is good to see. Good? Okay. Where are we for time? Because I have a couple I want you guys to try to answer on your own. We're gonna try one more together, and then I have a couple I want you guys to try on your own, and then you could put your answers in the chat. We're gonna do one last one because I want to show you a specific point. Okay.
Mike, I think they don't actually have access to the chat, so we'll just ask anyone bold enough to raise their hand and we'll let them guess.
Once they guess, yeah, that's great. Okay, this is the last one we're gonna do together because I want to give you guys some time to try some on your own. So once again, it has leaves, not needles, so we're gonna start on page 14. So branching pattern, is it opposite or alternate? You can see these two are directly across from one another, so it is opposite. So we're gonna go down to the opposite symbol, and now it's asking, are the leaves compound or simple? So hopefully you saw, just like with the hickory, here's where the leaf is meeting the stem. This is the leaf right here, so this is a compound leaf. All right, so we are going below. So we're at the last couplet on page 14, and it's asking, the choices are the first choice is if the 5 or more leaflets radiate from one point, or do the leaflets not radiate from one point, or there are only 3 leaflets. So these are not radiating from one point. It's not palm shaped, right? So we're gonna choose that second choice, and it's gonna take us to page 16. Okay, so our first choice on page 16 says if the leaves are of different sizes and shapes. And they might be slightly smaller when you go down here, but they're all generally the same shape. So the second choice is if the leaflets are similar in size and shape, go below to ashes. So now we're to ashes, and it asks 2 questions. If the leaflet has a short stem, you can go below, or if they have no stem. So hopefully you guys can see there is a short stem on the leaflets. So now we're going down to the last couplet on page 16. And the choices are the leaves regularly toothed, or are they not regularly toothed? So, oops. Can you guys see this one? There are some indentations, but they're not regular by any stretch, right? It almost looks smooth. Not regularly toothed, so we're gonna go on to the next page. And we're on page 17 now. And the first couplet asks if the twigs are hairy or are they not hairy? And you would really see, I mean, it looks like there's a little fuzz on it here, but it would be pretty prominent if they were hairy. So this is not hairy. So we're gonna go below, and our last couplet asks 2 questions. If the leaves are whitish beneath or if they're green on both sides. So here's green, and what do you call this? Kind of, I could see a little white, but not really strongly white. So this one's a little confusing, right? I had trouble with this one first because green on this side, maybe a little lighter on this side, but I wouldn't call it strongly white. So this is a good example. So we're at that last couplet. It gives us 2 choices, white ash or green ash. So if you look at the habitat for white ash, if you look all the way to the middle one, if you look all the way to the right-hand side of the page, it shows some trees on a little hill. So in the key, that means kind of an upland drier area. Whereas the green ash, which is all the way at the bottom, shows trees in a depression. So that's more of a lowland wet area. So I got this tree in a very dry spot in my yard. So this is an example of how you can also use habitat to help you. So this is a white ash. Good? Okay. So I threw that one in there because I wanted to show you how to use some of these other factors. Okay. Let's see. This next one I want you guys to try on your own. And I'm just gonna hold it up here and maybe I'll give you, raise your hand to ask questions. But when you think you have an answer, raise your hand and we'll see how people do. We're probably not going to be able to get to all 40 people, but we can see our branching pattern. We can see our leaves. There might be some things you need to show me in the key, or I might need to show you from the key. So just raise your hand to ask those questions. So why don't you guys take a stab at this? I'm just going to stand here quietly and hold it. I'm going to work through it too, so I can maybe show you guys features as they come up. This one's going to be a little tricky. So hopefully I'm going to give you a close-up of the leaf because you're going to need to see that for some of the other questions. Hopefully everyone has seen at this point it's alternate branching. Here's one, the next one's on the other side, the next one's on the other side, okay? And try to show you. Like a little holder thingy. What a holder thingy would be, but. No questions at this point?
Oh, we just have a hand raised from Catherine Heck. Oh, which just disappeared. Now we have a Catherine Jordan. Hold on, let me unmute you. Let's see if we can just unmute her here, Catherine. I think once I have to ask you to unmute, and then you should be able to say that you do want. Oh, here we go.
Hello.
Hi, Catherine. We can hear you.
So I was thinking I found it, but I'm confused by the image. I thought it was the bitternut hickory.
Nope, because hickories have compound leaves, Catherine. And if you look at this guy, where the leaves meet the main, whoop, hard to hold these, sorry. Let me grab it. Where the leaves meet the main stem, there's just one coming off. Or here's a better example, right? So these are simple leaves.
Okay.
So try that again. So you're gonna have to go back. So we talked about that the branching pattern is alternate and the leaves are simple.
I went to the wrong couplet. That's why on page 28, I went to the wrong couplet.
It's all right. It happens. Like I said, it happens all the time. I still do it too occasionally. Any other guesses? Are people struggling? Trying to show you the teeth up close. Anne, do you have a tree finder?
Yes, I think I have found it, but I'm waiting to see if somebody else has found it.
All right. Hopefully not everyone is waiting for someone else to guess.
Yeah, does anybody want to
Here we go. We have a hand raised from Amy. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Is it a chestnut?
Oh, it is not a chestnut.
Oh,
You're in the general area, but you're off base. I'm not sure where, Amy. Let's see. Try it again, Amy. Try to go back and see. One of the other questions with this one that might trip people up was whether it's singly or doubly toothed. That's why I'm trying to show you it up close. You can see like the point here. That's like the main tooth, but you can see other little points. So this leaf is actually doubly toothed. If that, I don't know if that would help with Amy. I know that chestnut is single toothed. And the base of the leaf is also important identification.
let's see who else has gotten close enough to make a guess.
Oh, here we have Fiona Mitchell. Let me unmute you.
is it an elm?
It is. That's great. So it's very hard to tell what type of elm because if you get there in the key, you have to actually look at the texture. And this one is only rough on the surface. It is not rough on the bottom. So that's your next hint. Oops, sorry. I'm trying to get to the right page and hold the leaf up.
Since we're getting closer to 1, I just want to jump in really quick before anyone has to leave to mention and to apologize to you and Anne for not mentioning when I was multitasking in the beginning that Ella is a program of Teatown that partners with our invaluable partners of Mike, you at Pace University, and Anne Jaffe Holmes at Federated Conservationists of Westchester County. So I want to make sure that I didn't fail to mention that before people had to leave.
And so what we'll do, yeah, within the last few minutes, so this is, as I said, it's an alternate tree. It's a
We have Judy Halstead coming in.
All right, Judy.
There. I got confused earlier on, like when you're looking, back early on page 14, and you say if the leaves or buds are opposite of each other, then you're not, like, you're holding what we call a leaf at that point. You didn't look at that point for the oppositeness.
Oh yeah, so sorry, Judy. So this is where we got to that. So are you still on, Judy?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, can you see this? So these are the branching pattern. Can you tell what it is now?
Yeah, but I see what it is. But
Okay.
like, so put your finger where it was a second ago, right now, again.
Here?
higher, over a little bit. Like, well, whatever. But that's not, those things aren't the leaves. Later you said the other things are the leaves.
Yeah,
Like-
this is the branch. So the branches, you can use the branches to determine if something's alternate or opposite as well.
Okay, it's just that the book says if the leaves are opposite each other. So I kept trying to go to the leaves to see if the leaves are actually
Okay.
opposite each other.
Yeah, and if you look at the leaves here, Judy, like there's one coming off, there's nothing on the other side of it.
Okay. But sometimes similarly with regard to the maples, do you have your maple handy that you could show me the maple?
Yes.
Okay, so when I was looking at maples, I was trying to do it from where all those leaves meet.
Yeah, they kind of come out in a cluster.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I tend to, and I should have pointed this out. Thanks, Judy, for mentioning this. I find looking at the branching pattern is easier than looking at the leaves.
but just go back down the tree a little bit.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And so will the branching be, as you go up stems, et cetera, will the branching for a particular tree stay either opposite or alternate?
Yes.
That's what you're implying. Okay.
Yep.
Terrific.
Yep. Except for
Thank
some
you.
of the brand new growth from this season, sometimes that looks a little strange. So I would always go to look at, so when you have new growth from this year, it's greenish. So always go back to like the brown woody growth, and that'll help you figure out alternate or opposite.
That was super helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay, great question. Thank you. Any other guesses before we go? Because it's 1 o'clock. We got 2 people.
Oh, we have Catherine Jordan back. Let's see.
Hi. So would this be the American elm?
It is. This is the American elm tree. So great. So for anyone who maybe got a little tripped up, it is alternate branching. It's a simple leaf. It's toothed. It's actually doubly toothed, right? There's little indentations on each tooth. So that's doubly toothed. And that'll help you get to that point. And it's only rough on the upper surface. On the upper surface, it's smooth below. So that's how you know it's an American elm. Well, I think, guys, that's it. I know an hour is not a lot of time to go through this. I usually spend at least a 4-hour lab with my students going through the tree finder, and it drives them crazy. But it's practice, practice, practice. You could use things like iNaturalist to help you get answers, or any of those other apps. But I always try to use the key to identify things, because it's training you to look more closely at the features, the branching patterns, whether or not they're toothed or lobed, instead of just getting an answer. And I think it's a good way to learn how to ID trees, because it's all about noticing those physical characteristics and those fine details. All right.
Thanks so much, Mike, for doing that. That was really
Oh,
interesting.
this is good. Yes, thank you, Mike.
And I
Two
will
people
add
And I-
also, sorry, Anne, I will add also that in addition to it just being really interesting to understand what's around you, it's also really important whether you're trying to determine the value of a tree at a given development site, or deciding what kind of trees that you want to plant in a given area for both energy savings and reducing the heat island effect, for understanding biodiversity and its wildlife value that it brings to an area, to determine its stormwater protection value, or things like whether it's native or non-native and invasive. So carrying this through to how we plan for the future and what we're planting in certain areas, it's really useful for that as well. So thanks a lot, Mike. And now Anne, sorry.
Yep, she's muted.
Oh, I think Anne got muted again. Here we go. All right, well, Anne.
About that.
Oh, there we
No,
go.
that's all good. You really said it well. That's actually where I was headed, but you said it really well. Thank you.
All right, so Mike,
One
if
thing,
you have
Nadia, can I add one last thing?
Yep, absolutely.
And kind of piggybacking on what Nadia said, I know a lot of you and Ella are members of conservation commissions, and one of your tasks is to protect the natural resources in your community. It's hard to protect things if you don't know what they are. So I'm a big advocate for learning identification. So, think about it. It does require work, it does require practice, but once you kind of get over that initial hump, it comes pretty easily. And we have, as I said, the Fern Finder and Newcombs. We're thinking the idea of trying to do more of these virtually. So let Nadia know what you guys think. If you thought this was helpful, or if there is a way we can modify this to go to do more of these identification type workshops. I would have loved to have been outside, but I don't have Wi-Fi signal out there to kind of show you the trees. But let us know. We'd love to get some input on this and thinking about how we can design more Ella workshops virtually, because we don't know what the future holds right now. But thanks everyone for coming. And you have my email, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. And, you know, I guess that's it.
All right, I will take this recording and I will send it out to everybody, including both your contact info, Mike, as well as my own, in case anyone has any further questions. We're sorry we weren't able to take more now, but we're trying to keep it in that kind of that lunch hour space. So thanks everyone for joining, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.